So, you want to start a business. I've been in your shoes and know that the best thing you can do right now is start to build your support team. Here we are today. What you need to know before you launch. Expert Connections starts now. New year, new you, new business. Welcome to Expert Connections. I'm Julie Holton. Whether you're launching a new business or still in the startup phase, we have the top 5 things you need to know. I'm joined by John Mashney, an attorney at Foster Swift Law Firm. Hi, John. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Julie. Great to be here.
What a great topic. John, you work with a variety of people at all stages of business, all sizes of businesses. What is the first thing that people really need to know when they're launching a new venture?
The first thing I always tell people is, why are you starting a business? And be able to answer that question. What do you want to get out of it? Is it money? Is it there's something you really like to do? Is there something you're really good at? You want to turn it into a business? Do you want to sell it? Do you want to do it forever? Just have an answer to the question. Why are you starting the business? What do you want? Do you want it to take over your life? And so then that's all you do every single moment of every day? That's very different kind of answer than, hey, I want to create a lifestyle, or I just want to make some money, or I just like doing certain things.
Absolutely, especially because if someone is looking for that time freedom, getting that time back into their lives, then you really need to know going into a new business, how much time that's going to take up. Now, depending on starting capital, many startups start small, possibly one owner wearing a lot of hats. We know what that's like. There can be pros and cons to this, John. What is the second thing that we need to think about here?
So really the next thing I always ask is, so now maybe hey, here's what I want to get out of it. I think the first question after that is, what do you bring to the table in terms of skills and abilities? What can you do, and what are you going to provide, or what services can you offer in the business itself? And just thinking about, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Just having an understanding of what you can do and what you can't do. I think it's very, very important to realize those things before you go any further.
John, one of the best pieces of advice that I was given when I was launching my own business was to really think about, when you start to bring people into your team, who are you bringing in and what are their skill sets? For example, if you bring in Uncle Joe to run QuickBooks for you, but maybe it's not Uncle Joe's forte, but he's willing to help out, you need to know when you're going to outgrow Uncle Joe. Just as an example, nothing against Uncle Joe. He's probably great. But, every one-man band needs a team, whether you're ready to bring people on board or whether you're looking at those outside experts. I like to call mine my personal care team, my personal support team. Yeah. John, what kind of team are we talking about here? What kind of people do we need to help support us?
That's a great question, Julie. That's the third thing that I think every entrepreneur needs to do when you start a business, is build your team. And I think it just applies across the board. And if you don't do it, then you're going to fail. You're going to have failures. It's going to be, a ball is going to get dropped somewhere. And at a minimum, I think if you're starting a business, you need, self-servingly, a good lawyer, right? Sometimes multiple lawyers. You need a good accountant, oftentimes a good insurance agent, sometimes a banker. And then depending on what you're doing, you need to think about the answer to the last question is, what skills do I bring? But what skills do I not bring? And then build the team to fill in those gaps. That's the importance of the team, because the bottom line is, if you think you can do everything, you're not going to be able to do anything. And you need the team. And sometimes, like you're saying, sometimes it's like build the bench too, right? What if one team member can't do a piece of it, right? Well, I need someone else to come in. So sometimes it's not just like build one, the starting team, like who's sitting in the wings waiting. It's important to have a team, and then the team really depends on why you're in it, right? If time is really important and money not as much, maybe you need someone to fill some of the tasks that take up the time. So it's important, build that team, and it's super specific to whatever you're going to be doing.
I like how you said that too. If you're trying to do everything, you're not going to accomplish anything. So how do you find and build this team that you're talking about?
Ultimately, it's very difficult sometimes to find the right people, right? And that doesn't mean you don't start the team. It just means, who do I have right now? For example, I know people who they're looking for a new accountant. Well, my advice is, make a list of all the accountants that you know, ask for referrals, and then before you meet with people, figure out the non-negotiables, figure out what exactly you're looking for in an accountant, and then just go talk to them. If they're willing to meet with you, great. You can interview them, ask them your questions. If they're not willing to meet with you, then cross them off the list, right? It's not, don't overthink it. Don't overcomplicate it. Just go with the best that you can and then move forward from there.
All right, John. So we're giving 5 tips that you need to know to start a business. So number 1, you said, why are you starting the business? Number 2, what skills and abilities do you bring to the business? Number 3, what team do you need? Because you're not going to have all the skills. So who do you bring onto the team? And then number 4, how do you find and build that team? That leads us to number 5. Our last question here, what skills do I need to develop to be successful?
I think this is the one that most people miss. They get their business off the ground. They start to have some success potentially, right? Things are going well, making money. And then they kind of hit a plateau. They flatline a little bit. And why is that? It's because what I've noticed, even myself and in other people, is we're not thinking forward. We're not thinking far enough to say, what skills do I ultimately need to develop in myself to get better, right? Get better at what you do, build more skills that are valuable to other people. Don't just think, hey, I have everything I need at the beginning. Think, what do I need to grow into to be successful and to get what I ultimately want to get from the business? Back on the first question, why are we starting it?
John, these are great tips. Thanks so much for sharing your insights on what you need to know before starting a business. To learn more from John and the attorneys at Foster Swift, just head to our website, expertconnections.tv, and click Legal Connections. You can also find us on YouTube. Check us out and be sure to subscribe. If content is king in marketing, then storytelling is queen. That means you've got to be good at telling the right story. And today, our marketing experts have a twist on what that right story might be. Joining us is Jesse Flores of Super Web Pros, Seth Getz of Symposia Labs, and Paul Schmidt from Unodus Multimedia. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Julie, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So we've all heard that storytelling is a huge part of marketing. We probably talk about this all the time, but most people tend to tell their own story, perhaps painting themselves as the hero. Seth, how impactful is it to actually tell the client's story instead of your own?
Our clients have their own story that they're telling themselves, their own story, the dialogue that's going on inside their heads. And if you can actually tap into that, if you can actually connect with what they're thinking, the questions they have, the issues they have, the problems they have, you can be so much more impactful. There's a very old statement in marketing that people don't want a drill, they actually want a hole. And so the more you talk about your product, your service, what you do, how you do it, all that stuff is relevant, but it's not what they actually want to hear. If you want to touch them, if you want to reach out and you want to make impactful to them, you've got to step inside their head, in their worries, their fears. There's a statement that I've always liked, that you can't truly market to somebody until you can tell what keeps them awake at night, staring up at the ceiling, worrying. If you know that answer, if you know what the problems they're facing, and you tell a story around that with your service or product as the solution, that is impactful.
That's so true, Seth. All right. So businesses hear this all the time, tell your story, but actually you're saying tell your client's story with you as the hero. You're going to solve what's keeping them up at night.
Correct.
The biggest part of storytelling is knowing your why. Simon Sinek became famous for his books and courses, Start with Why, Find Your Why. When it comes to storytelling, Paul, you preach this all the time. What does it mean to know your why?
This is something that I've actually ingrained into our mission statement as a company, and it does stem from Simon Sinek and that book, Start Your Why. But so I break it down into a couple of parts. First is like what we talked about is knowing your why. Now, your organization has a mission and a vision to move forward and to gain this audience or to reach an audience, and that's got to come first. If you can't explain your why through that mission and vision, then you can't promote it. You can't inform or educate the people about what you do because you really can't explain it. So what ends up happening is that the message gets watered down or drowned out. And, as we've been talking about with all these platforms, the signal versus the noise ratio is especially high. So you have to know what you're about to bring anyone else you want to get to in. So the second part of this why aspect is the documentation of why, or documenting your why. Now that you know who you are and what you do as an organization and can explain it, your next step is the how and the where. How are you going to explain this, and where are you going to put it out there to? So how are you going to document, how are you going to document the people and places that are impacted or are doing the impacting within your organization by the mission you set out there, and where are you going to obviously display this? So where will people see all of this information? So the why here is really the core foundation of any of the messaging that you do.
Well, and I love, Paul, that you brought in the where as well, because Jesse, you've mentioned that empathy and the storytelling can be good for SEO. What? Tell us more about this. How is empathy good for search engine optimization?
Yeah, great question. So I alluded to this a little bit last week. So one of the main ways that you can, at least in the digital world, one of the main ways that you can demonstrate some of your empathy is by providing content that your customers care about that helps them solve problems. And in fact, one of the things we talk with folks all the time when we are putting together content strategies, say, I don't know what to write about. And it's really easy. Just go ask the sales guy what questions he gets asked all the time. Or if you're the business owner, what questions do you get asked all the time? Because those are the things that you should be talking about. And you might say, okay, well, everybody else already has all these other posts on this too. But that doesn't matter, because back to what Paul was saying, your why is going to be different than someone else's why. And the DNA of your why is going to be different than somebody else's. And so if that person is on your site or reading your content with your perspective and your rationale, it's going to have a different flavor than any of the other kinds of listicles or articles or briefs that are put together that are out there. And so it's really important that if you have a strong why, and if you've bought into the idea of your customer story, as Seth alluded to, that you then put together a content plan. Well, and here's the thing, as you put together more content, more meaningful content, more engaging content, that gets indexed. It gets indexed in search engines. And overall, the next person searching for the answer to the questions that you've already solved, you start to show up. And ultimately, what ends up happening is your demonstration of your care and empathy for your customer story, the questions and comments and concerns that they have, which get put together on your blog or YouTube channel, ultimately reflect in Google eventually.
And the only thing that is better than a content plan, a good content plan, is content that can be repurposed or serve multiple purposes like you're describing. We can capture your why, whether it's in video or in marketing messages, and then making sure it's showing up in SEO. What a win-win. All right. Thanks all of you for joining us. Check out all 3 of our episodes on how to create the best user experience. You'll find them all on our website, expertconnections.tv. Just click the link for Marketing Connections. You can also find us on YouTube. Check us out and subscribe. Our experts are tracking trends as we look ahead into 2022. The circle of sales success is one of those topics to keep your eye on. Our own Sherry Pash will keynote this session, and today she's giving us a sneak peek in our Sales Connections segment. Welcome, Sherry.
Hey, Julie, it's great to be here. And I always love talking sales and growth for companies and nonprofits. So I'm excited to talk about the circle of success.
Well, I'm excited that you're giving us a sneak peek at what's ahead. This is a signature speaking engagement that you're being asked to do on repeat, the Circle of Sales Success. I imagine it's such a hot topic because so much of sales as we knew it really went out the window during the pandemic. Sherry, how important is it to really have a process and foundation in place for your sales work?
Julia, I think it's one of the most important things that a sales team can do, even if you don't have a sales team and you're responsible for growing your revenues, that you've got to have that foundation set. No matter if it was pre-pandemic, during that pandemic, or now that we're into the recovery, we've got to have that sales process solid. It's a fluid process. as we set that foundation and consistency, really. So I like to think of it as a circle of actions that take your sales to that next level. And some of those things in there we'll be talking about are researching, finding those right prospects, the relationship. These have all changed during the pandemic, but that relationship piece is always the same. The actual sales process and revenue goals, we have to have those outcomes and measurements, and then how do we retain them? So as we move forward in the year, we want to make sure we have our strong circle set for sales growth and success.
Okay, so when you talk about the circle of sales success, you're actually talking about this circular process. I'm listening to hear this sneak peek. We don't want to give it all away, but I really like what I hear you saying, because it really is moving from one action item to the next. Now, most industries have tools to complete a job or their work. In marketing, we sometimes call it like our tool chest or our toolkit. I know you do in sales as well. Like, what kind of tools are we talking about here?
That's so true. I always call it your toolbox. You can never have enough tools or new tools in your toolbox. And sales tools do need to be refreshed, especially now. And as we sell into recovery and as we move through the year, we have to make sure the tools in our box are sharpened and practiced. So just a few of them might be things like a discovery worksheet. Are we discovering the priorities and motivations of our customers, clients, and members? And those discovery worksheets need to be updated. And if you don't have one, that's a foundation for closing more sales. And then we have to have those benefit statements, Julie, that talk about why what we do or the product we have is important to the purchaser, the client, the customer, the member. So benefit statements have to have that for every revenue producing area you have, basically.
Sherry, you've mentioned some of these tools in prior episodes, so we'll link to those here with this video. If you're watching on TV, head to our website. We'll link to it there. If you're watching on YouTube, just look below and we'll have it there for you. Okay, Sherry, so once these are in place, once these tools are in place, how do you go about starting to find prospects for your business?
Some of the things that you can do is actually looking at your lost business report or your drop member report. We want to know who's not sticking with you, who's not doing business with you, because that's going to drive where you look for prospects, right? We don't want to keep repeating what's not working or what we lose or doesn't come to fruition. So we want to work on really finding your best prospects. And you do that again through personas and profiles that define the type of company or the person that are the best prospects for you. And when you think about your profiles, they really target those prospects that generate the revenue you need for growth. Sometimes you can just find all the customers you want, but you need it during a slow period where you have a gap or a certain type of high revenue type producer. So we want to make sure we know who we're going after. Then once you understand who your best prospects are, then we can determine where they hang out and where you should be hanging out to build a relationship with them digitally, in print, in person. So a lot of ways that we can start to formulate that. And we'll talk a lot about that in this session.
So what you're saying, Sherry, is to go back to basics and grow from there. Is that what I hear you saying?
That's exactly it. You've got to get back to those basics. Make sure you have strong tools, strong measurements, because again, in sales, you've got to measure your trends constantly. So get back to the basics exactly.
Sherry, one final question. What's one thing that you notice that businesses or membership organizations tend to struggle with when it comes to the sales process?
I think it's one of the very first steps in all of this is to set our revenue goals, is to set how many new customers or accounts or members we want and how much revenue do we need from each of those areas. Because with our goals, we'll know a lot better where we want to target prospects, right? We can just go find any customer, like I mentioned a minute ago, but we want to really make sure that we have goals for numbers and also for revenue. And that's a really important piece that a lot of people forget because we want to be able to measure and have that success piece.
Sherry, thank you so much. The circle of sales success, one of those trends to keep your eye on in 2022. You'll find a lot more online from Sherry, including a link to learn more about her talk on the circle of sales success. Just head to our website, expertconnections.tv, and click Sales Connections. You'll also find us on YouTube. Check us out and subscribe. For our dose of Heart and Soul Connections this month, we're focusing on family, highlighting women with stories of leadership. Today, the story of a woman whose passion for helping others is spreading throughout the state. I'm here with Penny Armbruster, Executive Director of the Loop Clinic. Penny, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So glad to have you here and so excited to really dive in to the Loop Clinic and what it is that you do. So start by telling us, if you will, what is the Loop Clinic and who do you serve in Michigan?
Well, I am thrilled to have the opportunity to really share what God has been doing in the state of Michigan. In a short period of time, He has grown our ministry from a tiny little clinic in Detroit that served maybe 10 to 15 women each clinic, to now we can have upwards of 40 to 60 patients come. We provide free prenatal care and infant care to babies up to the age of 12 months. And we are thrilled to announce that we are about to open a second clinic location in the city of Flint. So I couldn't be more excited. We provide excellent medical care in partnership with the University of Michigan. But it's really just more than medical care that these women are in need of. To be able to access medical care, you need transportation. You need to know what you're going to feed your children for lunch and for dinner that night. You need to know that you're going to be safe. If those things aren't in place, the last thing you do as a mom is take care of yourself. So as we've kind of gone on this journey of providing medical care, we've realized that we serve a God who sees, El Roy, the God who sees. And through our eyes, we have been able to realize the need is so much greater than medical care. So we've been able to create partnerships with other ministries, and we've been able to add wraparound services to really holistically care for these women so that they have the time and the energy to stop for a minute and think about themselves and think about what they need to take care of their babies and their bodies during this incredibly important season of their lives.
What an incredible ministry to be working, combining ministry with the medical field to help those who are most vulnerable. Penny, how big is the need for your services? You talk about expansion from Detroit to Flint. How great is the need here?
I think the need is hard to quantify because the kind of patients we serve are invisible. They don't typically have Medicaid. They're not typically registered with any kind of government body. They're not getting any government benefits. They're really unseen. So it's one of those things that as we go into a neighborhood, as we go to a new city, we begin to network, and it's like they come out of the woodwork and the word spreads. Really, it's a word of mouth spread. Initially, I thought we were serving women who weren't covered by Medicaid. But now I have patients. I had a darling patient come to us last month, and she had called 14 doctor's offices to get obstetric care for herself in her pregnancy. And she had Medicaid, and not one would take her because nobody was interested in taking a high-risk patient with Medicaid in the city of Detroit. So that has expanded the number of patients that are needing care because they have insurance, but they can't actually get access to care. So there are seasons in the year where we can't begin to keep up with the need. So it's really hard to quantify.
Wow. Penny, I'm curious, what impact have you seen from the pandemic? Has it increased the need or changed the types of needs for the women and the families you serve?
I think it has changed the types of needs. Obviously, in the city of Detroit, the struggle with COVID was significant. A lot of services closed down. They were afraid to leave the house. The University of Michigan put in place new protocols for the treatment of women, which were, if you were a low-risk pregnancy, you could do a lot more care virtually. So we were able to provide our patients with Dopplers to check the heartbeat, scales, blood pressure cuffs, all the kind of testing we would typically do in clinic. And then we could do a regular virtual visit with a midwife. But 80% of my patients are high risk and they can't be managed virtually. So we had to be creative. At this point, we put in place, Huron Valley Ambulance donated an ambulance to us that we have been able to repurpose with all sorts of ultrasound testing equipment that we can actually drive that ambulance to the patient's house and see the patient right outside their home, which they felt a lot safer with during COVID. We could also do the infant care checks. If they're working in a job where they're not given time off for appointments, which if you're working somewhere like Burger King, your boss doesn't really have the freedom to give you 2 hours off to go to an appointment. We could drive the ambulance, park in the parking lot, wait till their lunch break, and see them on their lunch break. So we were able to encourage them to minimize their exposure, minimize their time outside of the home, recognize the risks that they were facing, and be able to meet them right where they're at by taking care to them.
Wow. You give a whole different meaning to creating accessibility, both financially and physically, to bring the healthcare right to them at work. You're also connected with a number of major partners. You mentioned the University of Michigan. You're also powered by volunteers. We have just about a minute left, but I know this is so crucial to your organization. Tell us about this.
So I find today that people are very tired of talk about making a difference. They really want to do something. They really want to serve. They want to make a difference. I have nurses who come off a night shift, drive an hour and a half into Detroit to take care of my patients. I have ultrasound techs who will go between Flint and Detroit, spending time in the ambulance, going to the patient's home. People want to make a difference. They don't necessarily have to be a medical team. You can be on my reception. You can be a greeter. You can prepare snack bags at home for the families. But people want to see that they can make a change. And it feels good to know that your work, your actions, your hard work are making a significant difference in the lives of these precious families.
The hands and feet of Jesus in action. Penny, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. You can learn more about the Luke Clinic online at thelukeclinic.org. We'll link that for you on our website, where you can also hear more from the women of She Leads Michigan. So head to our website, expertconnections.tv, and just click Heart and Soul Connections. Thank you for joining us for Expert Connections. I'm Julie Holton. We'll see you back here next Monday. Until then, you can find us online at expertconnections.tv and on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe.
Expert Connections is executive produced by M Connections Marketing Agency in collaboration with Foster Swift Law Firm. Strategic Solutions for Growth. Super Web Pros, Symposium Labs, Uno Deuce Multimedia, and She Leads Michigan. A special thank you to our Style Connections partners, Polka Dots Boutique, The Standard Spa, and Beauty by Wilder. Visit our Style Spotlight online at expertconnections.tv.